When Kelly Ripa jokingly confessed that she and husband Mark Consuelos once floated the idea of an airport divorce, fans laughed, partly because the couple's playful honesty is exactly why people adore them, and partly because the phrase sounded so dramatic, so cinematic, so them. But behind the humor is a surprisingly realistic slice of modern marriage, the small, absurd breaking points couples hit while living a life that's always in motion, often at 30,000 feet, pulling suitcases, wrangling children, or sprinting to gate 32B with a lukewarm coffee. Ripa and Consuelos, married for nearly 3 decades, didn't spill the details of what, exactly, pushed them toward joking about ending things somewhere between Terminal C and the Hudson News. But the imagery alone sets the scene: 2 tired people, bags heavy, tempers light, surrounded by the chaos of announcements, delays, and the vapor of burnt espresso. In that environment, even the most devoted couples can begin to imagine walking off in opposite directions, him toward baggage claim, her toward a new life in the Delta Sky Club. But according to relationship psychologist Dr. Corinne Lark, the airport divorce phenomenon is more common and more meaningful than it sounds. The strange psychology of travel tension. Airports are pressure cookers, Dr. Lark explains. There's time pressure, financial pressure, decision fatigue, physical discomfort, and unpredictability, all happening at once. People regress under that kind of stress. She uses the word regress intentionally. Traveling turns adults into their least regulated selves. You get hungry at the wrong time. You get tired at the wrong time. Your flight is delayed for the 3rd time, and suddenly you're fighting over whether to buy a $14 pre-packaged sandwich. Couples, especially those who operate well in stable routines, can fall apart in these liminal, disorienting spaces. It's not that the relationship is weak, Dr. Lark says. It's that travel strips away all the scaffolding. You're basically 2 raw nerves trying to get through TSA. For couples like Ripa and Consuelos, frequently traveling, juggling multiple careers, and raising kids in the spotlight, the stakes are even higher. Even in a healthy marriage, you hit points where you go, okay, we're done. I'm done. I'm walking away with my carry-on and starting fresh in another country, Ripa said on her show. The humor lands because the feeling is universal. The airport is a symbolic battleground. So why airports? Why not grocery stores or IKEA or tax season? Dr. Lark believes it's the symbolism. Airports represent transitions and choices, she says. Every sign is directing you somewhere. Every gate is a path you may or may not take. Subconsciously, the environment tells you, you can leave. That doesn't mean couples want to leave. Instead, the airport becomes a safe backdrop for testing the extremes of frustration. In other words, the airport is where you imagine the dramatic ending, not because you want it, but because your brain loves symbolic settings. You play out the fantasy for a moment. Walking in slow motion away from the relationship, soft sad music in the background, maybe an overhead announcement you interpret as destiny. Then you snap back into reality, grab your partner's hand, and head to gate 24 like civilized humans. Unless your gate moved again, which, let's be honest, might restart the cycle. Why airport breakups can actually reinforce a relationship. Here's the twist. Dr. Lark argues that these imaginary or briefly entertained airport divorces can actually strengthen a relationship. Conflict during travel is often situational, not relational, she explains. When couples get through it, they reinforce their capacity to survive chaos together. In other words, if you can survive sprinting through a terminal, losing a passport arguing over whether to check the bag, repacking your liquids in front of strangers and a 3-hour runway delay, and still choose to sit next to each other on the plane, you're probably doing okay. Couples often emerge from these airport meltdowns laughing about them, or at least turning them into stories they tell later, usually beginning with, "Remember when we almost split up in Chicago? That was wild." Narrative bonding, turning conflict into shared mythology, is one of the strongest predictors of long-term relationship success. Ripa and Consuelos, who regularly turn their personal chaos into anecdotes on television, are practically professionals at it. The humor factor. Why Kelly and Mark are the blueprint. Part of what makes Ripa and Consuelos' dynamic so enduring is that they treat their conflicts with levity. By openly joking about pressure points, they diffuse them. A near-airport divorce becomes less a sign of doom and more a sign they're still in the trenches together, still human, still occasionally irrational. Dr. Lark puts it like this: humor is a survival mechanism. When couples manage stress with humor, especially in extreme environments like airports, it keeps them connected. Ripa and Consuelos have long embraced the idea that marriage is both beautiful and bonkers. They're not selling perfection. They're selling partnership, the real kind, the kind that fights about boarding groups and then holds hands during takeoff. Why some couples actually thrive in travel chaos. Interestingly, Dr. Lark says that some couples function better in airports than at home. These partners feel energized by the sense of adventure, the shared goal, the us against the world mindset. They turn each challenge into a tiny quest. They high-five after clearing TSA. They share snacks instead of fighting about them. For these couples, Dr. Lark says, travel stress becomes an opportunity to reaffirm teamwork. It's all about whether conflict becomes adversarial, "you're ruining everything," or collaborative, "this place is insane, but we'll get through it together." Many long-term couples learn to shift into team mode automatically, especially once children come into the picture. Suddenly, the two of you against the airline feels downright romantic. What the airport divorce really means for Ripa and Consuelos: the airport divorce wasn't real. It was symbolic shorthand. A way of acknowledging that marriage isn't held together by constant harmony but by resilience, patience, and the willingness to say, "Okay, that was dramatic. Want a pretzel?" Experts say that the very fact they can name the moment, laugh about it, and move past it is exactly why their marriage works. The couples who last aren't the ones who never fight. They're the ones who survive the ugly parts, the stressful parts, and the parts where someone is crying in line for security. The truth is that an airport divorce isn't really about divorcing at all. It's about the fantasy of escape that releases the pressure valve, so you can return to reality and choose each other again. Not despite the chaos but because of it. So the next time you and your partner find yourselves in terminal chaos, hungry, annoyed, and debating the merits of boarding early versus boarding last, remember, you're not failing. You're human. And if Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos can almost call it quits at gate 17 and still end up a Hollywood power couple, there's hope for all of us. Just maybe bring snacks.